and it's me, Arielle. And this week, I'm going to be talking about a fourth obstacle to full recovery. And that obstacle is defensiveness. Defensiveness is something that we get defensive about because we don't want to believe that we are acting defensive to certain things. Sometimes defensiveness is a reaction that we don't even know that we are exhibiting. Sometimes defensiveness is like a coping mechanism, and sometimes defensiveness is just one of those traits that we tend to fall back on when we're struggling. But defensiveness can stop us from achieving full recovery. When we're doing very, very well and we're making lots of progress and things are going great, if that defensiveness sneaks its way in, it doesn't allow us to be the person that we really want to be and to live the life we really want to live. Sometimes we hear things about ourselves and we get defensive because we realize the truth in those things and it hurts. Defensiveness is what happens when we're not necessarily ready to come to terms with what we know to be true about ourselves. And sometimes we're defensive about very silly things, and other times we're defensive about some more deep-seated issues. And just because something is true about you and you don't like it, doesn't mean that it's a terribly negative thing about yourself. It could just be your perception. And even if the thing in question that you don't like about yourself or you're afraid of about yourself is negative and it's hard to deal with, not dealing with it and relying on your defensiveness to always get you through is a recipe for disaster because you're not allowing yourself to be authentic and you're not allowing yourself to recognize that you're human too. Sometimes we develop defense mechanisms to protect ourselves because of things that have happened to us in our past, but defensiveness doesn't help further us in recovery. It keeps us in place. And that's what you have to remember when you find yourself getting defensive or learning something about yourself or hearing someone's reaction to you that is negative. I'll come clean with you. I've had problems with defensiveness, with becoming defensive, because when I feel like my character is attacked, I don't like it. Who would? And one of the things that actually goes along with people-pleasing and being a perfectionist is that we want to be liked. Many people want to be liked. I certainly want to be liked. And when I'm hearing something about myself that I don't like and that I'm becoming defensive in response to, it's because in my brain I'm thinking, the person who just said that or thinks that doesn't like me. And if you have that innate need to be liked by every single person, that's why you are remaining in place in your recovery and not getting farther. Hard. It's so hard because wanting to be liked is almost a universal thing. I think more and more I'm noticing that it's very rare for people to not care what other people think. And really, you're only living your life. You're not living their life. So there comes a time when you have to just say, okay, everyone won't like me. And that's got to be okay. Another reason I have trouble stopping myself from becoming defensive is I feel like I'm misunderstood. If someone is saying something about me that digs deep and hurts. But if I look more closely and I really go within and think about it, usually it hurts because there is some truth to it. If someone is saying something about me and it really bothers me and I'm jumping to become defensive and protect myself, I'm creating this comforting barrier all around so that those painful words can't touch me. And usually I find that even if it's not 100% true, there's something about it that makes me uncomfortable because I can understand why they're saying it. And I'm not saying this because I think that you should let everything that people say to you, filter in and sit there and hurt you. And I know that words can be very, very hurtful. And there certainly are a number of things that people will say to us that won't have any truth to them at all. But I know that when I'm at my most defensive, it's usually because the element of truth is there. And I think this is a very human quality. It's not something that's unique to me, that I'm necessarily much more defensive than other people out there. I'm sure I'm more defensive than some and less defensive than others, but it's just something that I do recognize, and I don't like being defensive. I don't want to be defensive, and I do think that if I had allowed my defensiveness to become a deep part of my personality, I wouldn't have been able to achieve full recovery, because I would always be protecting myself from the things that I needed to face. And I think sometimes we think that if we allow ourselves to face those things that are less than perfect about ourselves, that we will like ourselves even less than we already do. And then we'll just be consumed with self-hate, even more so than maybe we already were in our eating disorder. And it will be hard to move on from that. But really, it's the complete opposite. The more you allow yourself to face those scary things, the more respect you will have for yourself, and the more you'll come to love yourself, because you will see how very human you are and how very imperfect. But those imperfections don't make you less appealing. You're afraid that they will make you less appealing, which is why you don't want to face them. But when you do face them, you'll see how brave and strong you are in the face of all those things that make you human. And it sort of allows you to practice being kind to yourself and to treat yourself with respect, even when there are things that you don't like about yourself. Because if you can't accept yourself, you can't fully recover. So if you are continuously being defensive, it means that you're not accepting all aspects of you. And we all have aspects about ourselves that aren't wonderful. They just are. And that's okay. Don't be afraid to see what's in there, to see who's in there. The other thing about maybe being afraid that you won't like what you find is that if you do find something you actually can improve, then you're able to improve it. But if you never go there and you never face it and you never open that door, you won't change and you won't become better. It will just stay as part of you. And that fear is actually keeping you from growing and from being the best version of yourself that you can be. And I think, too, you really have to understand the meaning of defensiveness, because it's not the same as being easily offended. I don't think I've ever been easily offended. People can say lots of different things to me. It doesn't matter. It can roll off my back, and I'm not offended by many things, but I have become defensive when someone, whether purposefully or inadvertently, calls me out on something about myself that I already am aware of and don't want to face. And that's defensiveness. The reason defensiveness often accompanies people who are perfectionists and people pleasers is because we feel like someone is going to out us and find out that we're not actually perfect, even though we know there's no way we can be perfect and perfection doesn't exist. And maybe our goal isn't really to be a perfect human being. The more someone sees that there is something about us that isn't 100% perfect, the more we feel vulnerable and like we don't have control over something. And it always goes back to that. And I think the more you can recognize that's what's happening, the more in control you'll actually feel. And you'll be able to sort of take the reins and say, I don't think I want to be like this, or why am I being defensive right now? And usually it's not quite as serious as it feels in the moment. Sometimes we feel like we're being attacked, so we have no choice but to put up those walls and to be defensive because we're protecting ourselves. And protecting ourselves is a good thing, but sometimes we're actually blinding ourselves. We're putting a curtain all around us so that we can't see anything else, and we're staying in our own little world. And staying in your own little world is never a good idea because you're not going to grow or move that way. A recovered life can't happen surrounded by curtains. It just can't. I hope you all have a wonderful week. I'll see you next time.